we've been playing games and exposed to a lot of games over the years. So we definitely want to be able to stretch our legs a little bit on this and, make the system our own, and also be like, well, what is it we're trying to do with this system? What is this game, right?
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds.
All right, so today we're going to jump into another Zoo Mafia diary, and in this one, we're going to discuss the fact that we've actually been playing Zoo Mafia. We've been playing it live on our channel here on YouTube, so you can kind of like go check it out and look at it. Ted's looking at me weird because I said we're on YouTube while we're shooting this video for YouTube. I don't know why I say what I say sometimes, but I said it, and there's that. But yeah, so you can definitely check that out. We also have other design diaries. This is number 6, so 5 more. We'll put a link to the very first one or the playlist in case you missed it, so you can check that out. As well as you can come back to the channel and check out the live plays and see how they're going. And that's what we're going to be discussing about, like how we feel like they're going.
Yeah, so at the time of the recording, we've played 4 sessions, and it has been an absolute blast to kind of not only have our own game, but to kind of be playtesting it, live, with an audience and whatnot. I'm having an absolute blast with it.
Yeah, and figuring things out, and if something's too confusing, like in real time, we figure that out. It has been a lot of fun, but if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Zoo Mafia and get in the know and join our family, we have a newsletter specifically for that. It's different than our regular newsletter. We really don't send out many emails over there, and whatever we send out over there will be specifically about Zoo Mafia. We're going to be working on quick start rules. We wanted to get this first initial playtest out of the way. Then we're going to put together some quick start rules to put over there for free and check it out. So if that's something that would interest you, you should find that newsletter in the description below and sign up for it.
Right, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get access to that at the time being. So get in on that while you can.
We had done a couple design diaries already discussing different games we could possibly hack. And even in the overview, when we talked about even the idea that we could just make up a new system altogether.
Now, coming up with its own system is something that we could do, but unless we came up with a mechanic that we really felt really fit the game and was needed, there's really not a whole lot of point in starting from scratch when there's so many other great systems to already work with.
Right, or if it wasn't a mechanic, we could just hack into an existing system. Like, we didn't decide, like, we need to play a game based off these mechanical things. We came to the conclusion that we wanted to play in this setting, so what is going to facilitate that? And we didn't want to do something like, let's make it 5e because we're used to playing 5e and shoehorn all this thing, and we'd have to do so much extra work, where there are other systems like Morkborg, Quest, and Powered by the Apocalypse, which we actually ended up using, that are, you just make a couple tweaks and you're kind of good to go.
And each rule system not only comes with the mechanics to make the game work, but also like a little bit of an unwritten kind of thing. So like with Quest, the unwritten part that's there is it's very much on the player side. The dice are in your favor because you've basically got a 50% just success rate and then a further 25% success with consequences. So you're going to succeed most of the time in what you're doing, and that doesn't really fit a Mafia style game. So that one didn't work out for us.
Morkborg would have been a lot of work, and it would almost not quite as bad as like recreating this a 5e system for it, but significant.
Right.
Where Powered by Apocalypse seemed to have the thing, it was the sweet spot for us.
I would agree.
And there are things about that system that we really like. We like the idea that you gain XP when you fail. We like the idea of successes with consequences. Again, your OSR style games like Morkborg and then just straight up Dungeons and Dragons, they don't have those elements to it. They're kind of all or nothing systems, or you have to hack them into the game. And we decided, why hack that part when we don't need to?
And when we're coming from fresh experience with Monster of the Week, which has a very episodic type scenario built into it, that's kind of like the unwritten rule that I see. It it fits those television shows that fall into that monster of the week style. Very much fits, you know, a heist, a hit, a rescue, all the kind of things that we felt very much fit the genre of what these mob style, you know, jobs are going to be.
So we definitely felt that, but I guess the question is, you know, when we went into it, you know, now having played 4 sessions, is that accurate?
I think so.
Yeah. So, you know, after having played 4 sessions, is everything exactly the same as when we first started? No. but that being said, like, you know, the feel of the Powered by Apocalypse engine with what we're trying to do with the game has worked out really well. And we, you know, we're not running straight Powered by the Apocalypse. We, you know, there's some other influences that we've kind of incorporated. Not that long ago, we used the age system. We've also played the Fantasy Flight Star Wars games in the past, and there were some elements from that we all also wanted to include in it as well.
Offering those kind of hacks to make it be a little bit more us and have some design elements to it is going to bring a nice feel to what it is, and not just someone who feels like, oh, all you did is reflavor some things and now call it your own game.
Yeah, and it will, you know, part of that too was like, even with other games like Quest, where there's not a whole lot to it, like at the end of the day, like I definitely had a game designing itch I wanted to scratch.
Sure.
Once we decided we wanted to make a game. So, you know, again, you know, we want to work on the setting and build out the setting, and that part's a lot of fun for us. But also, like, you know, we've been playing games and exposed to a lot of games over the years. So we definitely want to be able to stretch our legs a little bit on this and, you know, make the system our own, and also be like, well, what is it we're trying to do with this system? What is this game, right? And that's one of the things with the playtest, like right from the beginning, like I decided I was going to explore one particular avenue, and that is the game starts with a mafia war has just broken out. There are 3 bosses. You have to pick a boss you want to work for. You have to pick a boss that you've pissed off and has wronged you. And then there's a boss that you kind of aren't worried about one way or the other, or you just have your other reasons for wanting to avoid them altogether.
Right.
And so like that's kind of the premise for the game, and what your mob is doing, what your gang is doing. I learned mob is actually slang for gang. It is not actually slang for mafia, right? So like the mob, the gang, they're not in a mafia yet, but they're trying to get made. They want to become affiliated with one of the mafias. So that's what you know, Ted here and the rest of the players are trying to do, is trying to get their zoo animals made into a particular
want to become part of the family, as they would say.
Yes.
And you know, that's a fun term, because like family is related to a family of animals, and yet, you know, you've also got the mafia family. So like there's some, you know, pun intended type scenarios within the concept of this game, which, you know, I truly love. Yeah. But yeah, so like you've got, you know, these scenarios where the animals, this mob, this gang of people or animals are trying to do jobs, get noticed, and be welcomed into one of these groups. And that's like where you'd be like, all right, those characters could retire and, you know, you'd start a new campaign. Or if you wanted to like extend the game out and do other things, you can. But like that's the core concept of the game, and having elements where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be against these people and I don't like that person, or I don't care about that person, you know, adds a fun, like automatic built-in opposition, which is necessary for this style game.
So our 3 bosses for this game is Al Capone, Machine Gun Otto, and Carlo Hambino. And what the players decided was, Machine Gun Otto is too crazy and unpredictable to work for or against. So like essentially, you know, my take is Machine Gun Otto just scares everybody, so they don't want to be his enemy, and they don't necessarily want to be his friend either, because neither of them feel particularly like safe places to be in. Like the best you can hope for is to fly under his radar.
Indeed.
And then so that left, between Al Capone and Carlo Gambino. I don't remember exactly why you chose Carlo over Al.
Oh, Robin had an issue with Owl Capone. So their character, Oliver the Owl, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but Robin's like, nope, I am not working with Al Capone. So that pretty much led, all right, that's the enemy.
Yeah.
And it was very amusing that we have an owl and an otter as two of the bosses, and we have an owl and an otter in the party. That left it very much in a amusing zone. So it's like, all right, well, we got to go work for the Warthog.
Yeah, we're going to go in the other direction. And we turned that into mechanics, right, for the game. It's not just like part of the setting, but that also became part of the mechanics, right? So in Powered by Apocalypse, you generally roll 2d6 to determine, your success and failure or success with consequences. While in, Zoo Mafia, you roll 3d6. Again, only 2 of the dice are going to determine, how well you did. And the third die can kind of like throw a monkey wrench into things.
It can help, it can hurt depending upon what's going on. But if you roll doubles, it changes some of the possible outcomes that are there. And if you happen to roll doubles as well as one of essentially a 6, but we would come up with the figurehead for those particular dice, then something even more different happens.
Yeah, so you need 3d6 that are different, so you know which is which, and you designate each die as an ally, enemy, or a neutral die. If the 6 shows up and you get doubles, then something special happens. If multiple 6s show up with doubles, something, a combination of things happens. If you just get doubles, then something in addition to whether you fail, succeed, or succeed with consequences happens. So that third die serves one purpose and two purposes, I should say. It determines whether or not you're going to have doubles show up, and it helps determine whether or not a boss is going to show up. And the extra die is always the enemy die.
Right. I made it very easy for my rolling purposes. I use a green, a yellow, and a red. Green for my ally, yellow for the neutral, red for the enemy die. Makes it super easy to interpret, and I know that when I go to calculate success or failure, I always look at the green and yellow. Boom, done.
And I think we're going to color code it that way going forward as well, right? Like you don't have to pick the same configuration. You can have different configurations, but I guess most countries use stoplights, right, of some form or another. We're based in the U.S. and it's red, yellow, green, and most people know what that means. Red is kind of danger, beware. Yellow is caution, and green is go, good, right? Indeed. So makes it super easy.
Now, if things progress well for this and we decide to take this to Kickstarter, there's always the chance that we could kind of get custom dice made with these characters on it, stamped with instead of a 6, you've actually got the figurehead. Yeah. But since it's always going to be a fluid scenario of, well, for this campaign, who do you want to work for? Well, then the color coding wouldn't necessarily make a difference.
Well, we could do 9 packs of dice, right, so that you can configure them however you want it. But also, we're going to have it so that you don't need to buy dice, special dice at all. You just grab these 6s that you have laying around, and as long as you know what's what, it doesn't matter.
Indeed.
So what we did for the playtest is I've got 4 players, so we came up with 4 playbooks, and we tried to go with what we considered criminal professions that would kind of be the standard ones that people might pick, for the most part. Initially, I free for all. I was like, everyone, you just kind of pick what you want out of like this list of 13, and that didn't work out so great because the most
obscure,
the most normal was the safecracker, and from there it just got further and further away from what I would think a standard configuration would be for a team that's performing a heist.
Sure. And it was amusing, and while those selections weren't necessarily bad, it wasn't great for let's start designing a game and running a game to showcase what you can kind of do with it. So we kind of had another meeting and be like, look, this is what we're really looking for. Can we really go with this direction? I knew, I wanted to do a safe cracker. Like I felt a roguely tool user kind of thing fit not only the concept of what I was looking for, but I think would be a great fit for any type of Zoo Mafia game, because you're always going to need to get into or get out of places. So that's a good person to have on your team.
Yeah, and so, you went with a safe cracker, then we ended up with a lookout, a grifter, which is basically just like a con person. And grifter is also a slang term for someone that does perform cons, from that time era. We're looking at like the 1920s, 1930s. We just kind of like that aesthetic. And then we also have a lookout, and then we also have a hit person or button person. Button person would probably be the time period authentic term, I believe.
Sure. I'm not as into, the whole mafia scene. So that term is not exactly, super familiar to me. But, the hitman, the hit person is definitely something that, a good team should have, because it's like, all right, we need to bring somebody down. All right, bring them in.
The heavy, yeah. There is like a thug is another one, or thug bruiser. There's going to be another archetype, and that we'll probably look at. So when we do the quick start rules, I don't know if we're going to only do the 4 or if we pump it out to 5 or 6.
I think if we could get a couple more playbooks or classes, as some might say, I think that would be really useful. See if there's something more to round out. What do we feel is missing, from this 4, and look for something to add a little more bang for the buck.
Now, since Powered by the Apocalypse already uses like a tag system, we've been using that for our animal traits and animal features. And then, basically you're like, well, what kind of animal am I? Put that tag, like that becomes a tag in itself. And then you might have some other, other tags, like you're an otter. So, you have your pocket for whatever reason. Otters have a pocket they can put things in.
They have a pouch to store their favorite rock, so they can smash open their clams and what have you. But it was really useful to me, in last night's session. But, also tagged as aquatic because I can swim. So these kind of things that might not come up very often, but on the off chance that something does, you could like, boom, I got a tag for this, as opposed to needing to have a roll to do something. It's like, boom, this just kind of becomes an auto success.
Yeah, Robin's playing an owl, so flying tag, and like if they go, can I fly up to that ledge? Of course you can. You have the fly tag. You're a bird. But if our snake Eve says, "Can I fly?" No, you can't. But if they're like, "Can I climb this tree?" You're like, "You're a snake. Yeah, you can climb a tree." That's a snake thing to do, right? So so a lot of it is kind of like that. So what are some of the things like that we've learned from doing the playtest thus far? I mean, we're only 25% of the way there.
Sure. So the great thing that I'm
no, we're not 25% of the way there because my math sucks. We are a third of the way there.
So my experience with this is, number one, not every single Powered by the Apocalypse session is going to run exactly the same, and not every group is going to run things the same. We've had some sessions where the dice rolling has been rather light, and the XP, a lot of the XP you can get comes from failing at a roll. Yeah. So if you aren't rolling dice, your chances of a failure wind up becoming less, and that means you're going to advance slower. Now, in a typical Powered by the Apocalypse game, you get 2 XP per session. You get 1 for every failed roll that you do, and it takes 5 to get an improvement or an advancement. And we're using that same block for Zoo Mafia. Now, over the course of 4 sessions, my character's only failed at one roll. So, I feel like my character is further behind. But like I said, we had 1 session where there wasn't a whole lot of dice rolling that was done. But we have had, 2 characters who have had multiple failures in a single, session. So those characters seem like they're so much further ahead. And that's okay. But to me, it adds a very interesting, dynamic to what's going on. You fail, you're in danger more, so therefore you're gonna, keep your wits about you better and learn from. So I think that's kind of cool.
And also at this point, we've had 3 of the 4 characters get what's considered lingering injury, lasting injuries, where it hampers their ability to do things and how good they do. But also, this group has been very stingy with one of the systems we're using is called markers, and basically that's like a Benny that you can spend. The only problem is when you run out of them and you can't spend them anymore. Yeah, your character ends up getting removed from the game. And there's ways to get them back, but there's also ways to lose them.
Right.
But this group has been very stingy about spending, like to the point where the characters have almost died rather than spend their markers.
That is entirely true. We had one character where it was close, and another character went and used the marker. My character, I try to. I'm brutal with some things that I do, but I'm also I'm not the one that wants to be on the front line of danger, so to speak. So I don't know, but I think as we kind of get into the sessions 8 through 10, 8 through 11, that's where I think we're really going to see markers, used more often, because you won't feel all right, well, I'll have to start over kind of thing and be all right, well, my character was here for most of it, and I'll bring somebody else in for the final session or final few sessions. I feel making a good story last, I think is more what I'm personally looking for.
So I would say some of the things that I've learned from running it so far. One is the players have been really stingy with the markers. So does that mean I have to ratchet things up to make them spend them, or is it just this particular group that just happens to be really conservative with them? That could be part of it as well. We had created new terminology to add on to the Power of the Apocalypse system, where generally you don't get as many drawbacks per se. But we added it so it comes up more often where you do have drawbacks that happen to your character. That's why we're rolling the 3 dice. And we got rid of that extra terminology and just used the positive terminology that we were, but now it's you have a plus or minus in front of a number, so you just know the thing that's going on is good or bad, and that seems a bit easier.
I think that kind of change, it definitely took some getting used to. With the markers, it could just be not used to that particular system. While I've played Monster of the Week, I didn't feel when we played that it was an absolute necessary thing. All right, this is your exit strategy of the game forced against you, so you only wanted to do it when it was absolutely necessary. It was okay to fail at something. It was just kind of there to prevent, the really bad things from happening, or, from your character just dying. So that was my interpretation of what it's there. But to kind of take that into Zoo Mafia, where it's all right, well, we want to just have something succeed. That could be something to really look at.
So, and then one of the other things that we added to, it actually came from a suggestion of a friend of ours, who, Brian Colin, who watched one of the gameplays and brought something up. And also we wanted to ratchet up the tension and make it a little more brutal, which I think has worked. So now when one of those negative effects happens during combat, generally what it used to mean, or it can still mean, is that character will now have a negative to the next thing they do, or even they could even end up with a negative, possibly throughout that scene, depending on how bad of a thing happened.
Right.
Well, one of the changes that we made is now the GM can swap those negatives to add additional damage, which in this game it's not like D&D where you have a ton of hit points.
Right.
So even adding 1 more damage to an attack is significant, right? There's only their characters only have 10 health, and generally attacks will do between 1 and 3 points of damage. So adding another 1 to that could be brutal. There are certain enemy NPCs that have bonuses to make them do even more damage. So when you start stacking those things together, it can become really brutal really fast.
Yeah, when you had the one combatant be able to do 3 damage with the 1 hit, it was oh man, this is deadly. We need to get the heck out of here right away. Just because like that kind of threshold, like 4 hits and your character's toast. Like that's no, like that. I ain't fighting that.
Yeah, and also it's not that we're going for gritty realism per se. It is a very narrative driven system that we're playing with and the games that we're doing. But at the same time, when people start, slicing at you with straight razors and firing Tommy guns at you, we kind of want it to be dangerous.
Indeed, and that I feel fits, the mafia angle for what you see represented in, movies and TV shows. And, yeah, you can go with, the soft paws and have it be a very nice and neat story. And it's not about the killing or whatever have you, but it could absolutely be ratcheted up and like, all right, I'm going to put this, on kill mode, and you don't leave people alive.
Yeah. I mean, you did it in one of the sessions, put dynamite in somebody's mouth.
Yeah, I did put dynamite in somebody's mouth, but he lived.
Yeah. So we've been having fun experimenting with that. Also, the combat is pretty streamlined. It happens really fast, and that's the other thing. The combat in this using powered by the apocalypse is actually fast and brutal, kind of itself. The way it's designed. And we ratcheted up the brutal aspect a little bit to that.
Well, and that's the great part about that particular system is because the DM's not really involved beyond like guiding the players through their actions. So when you as a group are succeeding, you're reducing the threat of your enemies and working towards success. When you start failing, that's when you're going to start taking damage and it's going to get pushed back against you. So like the DM's not taking turns for every single bad guy, which I think, definitely speeds things up. So it's like, oh, well, there's 6 bad guys that we're going to fight. All right, great. That's not 10 turns. It's still only 4.
Yeah. I find our group still grapples with this a little bit, and I have to nudge them to go because they're just used to playing D&D round-based style games where Powered by Apocalypse doesn't work like that. It's like when you got something you want to do, you just do it.
You just, you speak up, you say your turn, and, sometimes it's like, okay, that person's going to go twice and, whatever have you. Because if you got nothing that you want to do, you can just kind of sit back and wait. But, the game, nothing happens if you're doing nothing. If you roll the dice...
Sort of. I mean, the GM, in this case, we're calling it the Zookeeper, does have something they can use called hard moves.
Right.
And I've only used them once so far. I really haven't been using them that much. But hard moves are something. And also, if someone runs out of their markers, that's when would start really using hard moves a lot.
Right.
But, that hasn't come up yet. Only have used it once, but that's when I'm just like, okay. And that's when like the move does a specific thing. It separates the group, it traps somebody, it does damage to somebody.
Or it does damage to everybody like last night.
Yeah, or it does damage to everybody. Those are considered hard moves.
And that was a fun element, when the pigeon turned around with a Tommy gun and fired at everybody. It was like, oh shit. That was completely unexpected.
Seagull.
Sorry, seagull. Pigeon was a different one.
Yeah, that was a different session, and they never unloaded on you guys with the Tommy gun yet.
But like Dave is running an excellent game. We've got a great cast. We've been, got a good rapport because we've been gaming together for so long. Highly recommend you check this out and see what the live play is all about.
Let us know what you think, how you've been enjoying the live plays, the diaries, the concept. There's a place where you can discuss it and share your thoughts and ideas down below in the comments with the Nerdarchy community.
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, even go ahead and attune to that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos on the channel here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so come on back. But can't wait till then. No worries, we got you covered. Here's our last design diary up here for number 5.
So until next time, stay nerdy.